McCarthy Insurance Group, serving the community for over 70 years. For home, farm, motor, life, health and business insurance, log on to mig.ie or free phone 1800 50 11 11. Probably your best call in 2024. Charles McCarthy Insurance is trading as McCarthy Insurance Group, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Real people, real opinions, real talk radio. The multi-award-winning Niall Boylan Show.
Getting back to Gerry Hutch. Hopefully I have Michael Doyle on the line. Michael, good evening to you. I hope I have you now.
I'm here, Niall. How are you?
Sorry, I do apologise for that, Michael. It's like technically
okay.
But we're sorted out now. Now, Gerry Hutch, it was suspected that, of course, he would leave the country because, look, he has, as we all know, I mean, the 60-year-old, he's reputed to have properties worth 12 million across the European Union and Eastern Europe. So do you think, firstly, he's going to leave the country, or is he hanging around?
Well, our prediction is that he doesn't plan to hang around too much longer. I'd imagine he will head back to Spain is probably his likely destination. He was arrested in Spain back in August 2021 in Fuengirola. He has property in that area. He's property in Lanzarote. He certainly has ties to the area. And in fact, when the Spanish court, which ordered his extradition in September 2021, a condition of that extradition was that if he is convicted of the murder of David Byrne, that he will be returned to Spain to serve that sentence. Because he is a tax-paying resident of the country. So we'd expect him, that's kind of in his plans, to kind of head back in that direction over the next days, possibly weeks.
Okay, well, the other thing as well, the Gardaí have put out an appeal for a renewed appeal for information. I mean, really, is that warranted at this stage? Because, you know, I've spoken to many people in relation to this over the last 24 hours, and I think the Gardaí are probably going to draw a line under this now because there's not much more really they can do. Because I think at this point we all know, or we knew, pretty much that he wasn't probably going to be convicted because they didn't really have the evidence to pin the murder on him.
Well, the Gardaí, I think it's been accepted that certainly their approach to the case, or certainly in the final stages of it, was not the way it should have been. I mean, relying on the evidence of Jonathan Doyle was certainly was a suspect from the get-go. And if they'd stuck to the original case, which was based around the tapes, and certainly if it was a common design, you could still be convicted of murder for that. And perhaps they might have been better going after that approach. But by relying on Jonathan Doyle, saying he was one of the gunmen, you kind of had to prove that and prove it in a way that was independent from what the state witness was saying. And they just were unable to do that. The evidence was just not there. It didn't.
I mean, why did they rely on his evidence when it was quite clear? Interestingly enough, I listened to Joe Duffy today, and he had played an interview that he had with Jonathan Doyle back in 2016 when the Gardaí raided his home. And they even had the Aqua team there as well because he had a pond out the back garden and took away one of his BMWs. And he was on with Joe Duffy like some whinging citizen who'd been hard done by the guards, saying that he'd never done a thing wrong in his life. That this is after he had just tortured a man and waterboarded him and tried to pull his fingers off. So, I mean, the man, they knew at that stage he's clearly a liar. So why do they pin their hopes on this guy?
I think it was just. I do honestly think it was just a case of they wanted to get Gerry Hutch so badly, and this new information or this new evidence was potentially, you know what I mean, it was the kind of light bulb moment they perhaps were waiting for. Like we all listened to that evidence. We all heard what came out of it, and certainly John Doyle spent 8 days in the witness box, and throughout all of that, it was the plan of the defence to basically paint him to be a liar, to attack his character at every angle. Mm-hmm. And he did that successfully because he even lied in the Special Criminal Court previously. And the judges even pointed out yesterday that even in his own evidence, you would think he would come to court planning to tell the whole truth, warts and all, if that was his intention. But he couldn't even do that in the witness box because he was asked about stuff like his relationship with Pierce McCauley. And he said he visited him 2 or 3 times in the previous year. Prison records showed that he visited him 14 times. There was also an
he said the same thing in the interview today, which was a 7-year-old interview or 6-year-old interview. He said the same thing on the Joe Duffy show going back then, that he had no relationship with these criminal gangs, that he didn't know the Kinahans, he'd never met them. He just was acquaintances of some of the Hutch family, but only the ones that were good people, not the ones that were bad people, because he was a public representative in the area. So, I mean, the man was clearly, he was living in a fantasy land, because at that point, the guards had already bugged the car when he appeared on the Joe Duffy show, they had already booked the car. That's why they took the car away, obviously to get the device back so they could get the recordings over the last week, because it was a short time after the Regency where another car had been searched up in I think it was County Meath, and they found 2 AK-47s in the back of it. So he knew damn well why his house was being raided, why his house being searched, and yet he goes on national radio and starts pleading this case of, the innocent man hard done by. It was just incredible to listen to.
It really was. I don't think he realised at that point. I don't think when he went on Joe Duffy. He went on Joe Duffy, I think, on the 11th of March. I think his house was raided on the 9th of March, which was the date the guns were seized, and it was the 7th of March that he actually went to the north with Gerry. So I don't think he realised himself at that point that the Gardaí had recordings of all his conversations. He certainly didn't know that they had the USB that had contained this video of the torture incident. That was found during those searches, but right. He wasn't aware that that would have been seized. He thought he'd lost that. Didn't know where it was, and the Gardaí managed to find it and went through it and were able to discover what was on it. He was completely unaware that video was still in existence in many ways. So it is. It's a strange one why they kind of wanted to pin their hopes on this person. I mean, if Jonathan Doyle wasn't a part of this trial whatsoever, I mean, he wasn't until the 11th hour. I mean, the prosecution and the DPP ordered his extradition based on other evidence and based on what was said in those cars. So the case would have been interesting to see what the trial would have been like if Jonathan Doyle wasn't a part of it. Yeah, what approach would have been taken?
I mean, because there's no doubt that Justice Tara Burns thought the Hutch family were responsible for the Regency attack, but they weren't satisfied that there was a reasonable doubt that Gerry Hutch himself was guilty of murder, because there was nothing actually pinning the murder to him apart from Jonathan Dowdall's testimony. So, I mean, Hutch is out. He's a free man. I don't think the guards are going to do any more on this, because there's nothing more they can really do.
I had this conversation with somebody else earlier today, and there is obviously, we know there were a number of other suspects, or at least 12 people involved in the Regency. They have suspects. I mean, they have numbers of chief suspects. I mean, a couple of names came out during the trial. I mean, yesterday, during her judgment, Judge Tara Burns said that it's fairly clear that Patsy Hutch was centrally involved in the movement of the weapons. A reasonable conclusion could be drawn from the whole case was that Patsy Hutch planned and organised the whole thing. What happens next is, I suppose, is up to the DPP. I mean, after what happened with Patrick Hutch Jr.'s trial 5 years ago, when that case collapsed under dodgy evidence in many respects as well, and after what's happening here, it would be a kind of surprising for the DPP to go, well, we'll charge more people. I mean, the DPP and the Gardaí might be, I think, more than willing to draw a line in the sand at this stage. I actually spoke to one of the lawyers involved in the case on the prosecution side a few months back, and he kind of hinted to me that he'd be glad to back of that book of evidence.
I mean, look, there's no doubt the guards have a tough job to do, and there is no doubt they do the best they possibly can when it comes to these kind of investigations. I'm assuming it's trawling through hours and hours of audio, video, everything, and trying to get all the evidence together for the DPP and for the book of evidence. But in saying that, did they do a good job of this, or did they make a mess of it?
God, have to be careful what I say here. They did. They put in. There's no question. They went through hours and hours of CCTV footage in particular. I mean, there was definitely flaws. There was definitely mistakes were made, and they're probably aware of that. But what happened after the Regency, we saw a number of murders throughout the country and abroad in relation to this feud. It caused absolute mayhem, as what the Judge Tara Burns said yesterday on the streets, and they've done an incredible job of I suppose, diffusing that feud and bringing a lot of people to justice in the aftermath. The Regency itself, I'm sure that there are still questions that remain, but certainly they've done an excellent job in what happened after that, and with a lot of murders that took place.
I mean, you yourself obviously have written many stories over the years, probably in relation to, gangland crime and all sorts of different things. Have you ever met Gerry Hutch?
I haven't met him. I came close to meeting him in Cheltenham, actually, about over 10 years ago. I saw him, and I went to have a word with him, and he kind of gave me the slip.
You were, yeah.
Yeah, I think he was wise to who he was anyway. Yeah, and then he disappeared on me that's over a decade ago. And I sat very close to him throughout this whole trial because I was there every day. So I'm under no illusions. I'm sure he's well aware of who I am. I've spoken to other members of his family and people who are associated with him. But I listened to those tapes, and the one thing I took away from listening to those tapes, that conversation he had with Jonathan Doyle, was that he was he's a man of great empathy. He was anxious. He was so he wanted all the killings to stop. He certainly didn't want any more innocent people caught up in it. You could tell listening to those tapes that this was certainly not in any way any kind of evil man.
I mean, that's what he was like when he was a kid, when he was 15 years of age and he was involved in crime, and he admitted to robbing cars and he admitted to robbing money. But he did say, I don't go near people walking down the street because they're not worth robbing. In other words, he didn't want to ever hurt anybody or injure anybody in the process of stealing. And that's why he got this, I suppose, this label as the ordinary, decent criminal. But when I looked on social media last night, and we were talking about this last night, and I looked at a lot of different reporters who had tweeted about, the day's events, etc., etc. And the amount of people that were putting up, well done, Gerry, congratulations, Gerry. What is that? And I asked last night, was that an anti-Garda sentiment, or was that people seem to be fond of him?
I noticed this throughout the trial because I was quite active on Twitter throughout it, and certainly there was a huge amount of support for him. People couldn't believe this case was ever brought. I spoke to a local councillor in the area today, and he said he's got massive support in the area. He's a real romantic figure in many ways. He's got huge respect. His family have commanded huge respect, and that's certainly how he's viewed. So a person who was capable of doing what happened at the Regency, I guess, wouldn't command that level of respect. I mean, what happened at the Regency? Anybody could have been caught up in that crossfire with those automatic weapons, and there was children present. It just didn't fit the profile of somebody, of a man like Gerry Hutch, that he would carry out something like this. It just didn't add up from a long time ago.
Finally, I suppose the other story, I was going to ask you about the bodyguard outside the court because everybody wants to know who he is. But
I've been looking at memes about it all night.
I thought the funniest line was, let the man grieve. And I was going, what's he grieving over? Anyway, leaving aside the bodyguard, there's some great memes going around with the music of the bodyguard.
I was looking at them all evening.
But leaving it aside, I suppose the other big story that came out of this, and just before we finish up, Michael, is Sinn Féin. Now, Mary Lou McDonald has obviously been asked about what her connection is to Jonathan Doyle and why he was selected to run as a candidate, and did she know what he was involved in and the criminality that he was involved in. Do you think that's a bit unfair? I mean, look, Fine Gael will take any opportunity to have a go at Sinn Féin, but do you think it's a bit unfair? Because realistically, Michael, I know you right, I know you're a journalist, but I don't know your background, you don't know mine. Do you understand what I'm saying? Either one of us could be involved in criminality, and we don't know, but we know each other, or know of each other. And that would be fair to say, wouldn't it?
I think it is fair to say. It's because of the political nature of Ireland. It's the political nature of most countries. If a political party is drawn into something like this or any kind of wrongdoing, the other side are going to jump on it, and that's just the way politics works. I think. I do kind of think it's probably. I didn't expect kind of fallout for Sinn Féin to be maybe as big as it has been, but they've distanced themselves from John Doyle from a long time ago. They distanced themselves from him back when he was convicted of the torture and false imprisonment. They distanced themselves from him. Now, he wasn't a Sinn Féin councillor for that long. I mean, we can all we could all turn around and run for local government tomorrow if we want to, without any checks in our backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean, Mary Lou McDonald missed out on an opportunity, I suppose, on the Late Late Show, because at that stage Jonathan Doyle had been convicted anyway. So she missed out on an opportunity to really distance herself by turning around and saying there was sub judice, which there wasn't, because he had already been convicted. He hadn't been sentenced, but he'd been convicted already. So she could have said what she wanted about him, couldn't she?
She could have, of course. Now I always kind of feel when something like this happens, I mean, should make Sinn Féin maybe think twice before they jump on stuff like election posters and all those minor things that they like to kind of target involving Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael at any time and spending and all those things. It should make them think twice about maybe looking at their own shit before they go on about petty enough matters, you would say.
Yeah, tidy your own house first. Absolutely. Listen, Michael Doyle, thank you very much indeed, and I appreciate you coming on the air. Michael Doyle from the Irish Sun.
No problem.
Real people, real opinions, real talk radio. The multi-award winning Niall Boylan Show.